Hey, welcome back. You know, sometimes the most powerful stories aren't the ones we find in books. They're the stories we choose to believe about ourselves. I'm Ibnul Jaif Farabi, and this is The Great Conversation, a podcast where we untangle the threads of history, literature, and the ideas that shape us. I want you to picture a 7-year-old boy standing in a small town in Germany, holding a book of myths. He's staring at an engraving of ancient Troy in flames. And he turns to his father, and with absolute conviction, he says, "I will find that city." Now, if that were the opening scene of a movie, you'd smile. You'd think it was a beautiful, cinematic moment of childhood wonder. But this isn't a movie. This is the origin story of Heinrich Schliemann. And what he did next didn't just discover a lost city. It fundamentally changed, and in many ways, hijacked the entire field of archaeology. This is what I call the Schliemann effect. So, who was Heinrich Schliemann? By profession, he was a self-made millionaire. A merchant, a trader in indigo and war supplies. A man who made a fortune through sheer grit and a knack for languages. He was not an archaeologist. He had no formal training. He was, by every definition, an amateur. And by the 1870s, with his fortune secured, he decided to pursue that childhood dream. He went to a place in modern-day Turkey called Hijacked, convinced it was the site of Homer's Troy. And he started digging. With massive crews, with dynamite, with a brutal efficiency that makes modern archaeologists wince. He carved a gigantic trench right through the mound, blasting through layer after layer of history to get to what he believed was the Troy of Priam and Hector. And then, in 1873, he found it, or so he claimed, a spectacular hoard of gold, diadems, goblets, jewelry. He called it Priam's treasure. He even had his young Greek wife, Sophia, photographed wearing the jewels, a living tableau of his triumph. The world went wild. The amateur had succeeded where the stuffy academics had failed. He had proven Homer was history. That's the legend. And legends are powerful. But let's pull back the curtain. This is where the Schliemann effect begins. The first element is narrative over evidence. Schliemann didn't just want to find a city. He needed it to be Homer's city. He was a phenomenal storyteller, and he shaped every discovery to fit the epic poem he loved as a child. That famous treasure of Priam. Most scholars now believe it was a composite find, artifacts from different layers and times, assembled into a single photogenic cache. The photograph of Sophia? Likely staged. The location? He was right about Hijacked being an important ancient site. In fact, it's a mound made of dozens of successive cities built on top of each other. But the layer he identified as Homeric Troy was actually from 1,000 years earlier. He destroyed countless other layers, other stories, in his single-minded pursuit of one myth. He didn't just discover history. He manufactured a historical narrative so compelling it overshadowed the messy, complex truth. Which leads to the second element of the Schliemann effect, the cult of the rugged amateur. This is the idea that passionate, self-funded outsiders, unburdened by academic rigidity, can see truths that the institutional experts miss. And look, there's a romantic appeal to that. We root for the outsider. I'm an entrepreneur. I get it. The problem is, in fields like archaeology, methodology matters. Context is everything. Recording exactly where an object is found, what soil layer it's in, what's around it. That's what turns a cool artifact into a piece of historical data. Schliemann's methods were, frankly, destructive. He treated the site like a quarry for treasure, not a library to be carefully read. But because his story was so good, the poor boy who became a millionaire who found a lost civilization, he set a dangerous precedent. He made it seem like the goal was the spectacular find, the headline, not the patient, meticulous reconstruction of the past. He hijacked the public's imagination of what archaeology is. And the third, and perhaps most insidious part of the Schliemann effect, is the theft of legacy. Schliemann didn't work in a vacuum. The site at Hijacked had been identified as a potential Troy years earlier by a British diplomat and scholar named Frank Calvert. Calvert was the real expert. He had quietly bought part of the land, conducted smaller, more careful excavations, and was the one who initially convinced Schliemann to dig there. But Calvert was careful, methodical, and, well, poor. Schliemann had the fortune and the flair. When the treasures were found, Schliemann took all the credit. He smuggled the gold out of Turkey, displayed it as his personal trophy, and wrote best-selling books about his genius. Frank Calvert was erased from the popular narrative. Schliemann didn't just take artifacts. He took the credit, the legacy, the entire story. He became the author of his own discovery myth. Now, I'm a storyteller, and sitting here, thinking about this from my own perspective as an engineer and an immigrant, I see a fascinating duality. On one hand, Schliemann's story is a classic immigrant hustle narrative, the self-made man who through willpower and obsession remakes his world. There's a part of me that admires the audacity. But on the other hand, as someone who values building things properly, who knows that a stable structure needs a respectful foundation, I see the profound cost. He built his legacy on a shaky foundation of destroyed context and appropriated credit. He reminds me of a certain kind of tech entrepreneur, all vision and disruption, who claims to have invented an idea while standing on the meticulously built work of others, leaving a mess of ethical questions in their wake. So what's the takeaway from the Schliemann effect? It's a cautionary tale about the stories we celebrate. It asks us to look behind the dazzling headline and ask, what was the cost? Who was erased? What complexity was flattened into a simple, sellable myth? Archaeology eventually grew up. It developed scientific methods, ethical standards, a focus on context over treasure. But the Schliemann effect never really went away. It shows up anytime we privilege the sensational find over the slow, collaborative work of understanding. It shows up when we anoint a lone genius and forget the team. It shows up in our own lives when we craft a neat story about our own past, editing out the messy, inconvenient layers to present a single, golden narrative of our own prime's treasure. Heinrich Schliemann found a lost city. But in doing so, he also showed us how easily the search for truth can be hijacked by the love of a good story. Our job, as participants in the great conversation, is to hold both in balance, to cherish the wonder, but to respect the dirt, the layers, and the quiet, careful work that actually brings the past to light. Thank you so much for listening. If this conversation resonated with you, please do share this episode with someone who'd appreciate it. You can find more episodes and transcripts at our website, lightnotstudios.com. That's lightnotstudios.com. For Light Not Studios, I'm Ibnul Jaif Farabi. Until next time, keep questioning the stories you're told.